The first crack of thunder rattled the old farmhouse, making the windows hum. I jumped, spilling a little of my tea on the worn wooden table. Outside, the world was a swirling gray sheet of rain, hammered by gusts of wind that sounded like a hungry animal clawing at the walls. I hated thunderstorms, especially out here. Our closest neighbors were a good mile down the winding dirt road, and their lights were always swallowed by the trees long before they reached our place. We liked it that way, most of the time. But tonight, alone, with the storm building, the silence felt less peaceful and more empty. My husband, David, was still at work. He'd called an hour ago, his voice tinny and far away. "Looks like I'll be late, honey. This storm's a real gully washer." He laughed, trying to make light of it, but I'd heard the worry in his voice. He knew how I felt about being out here in the dark, especially when the weather turned nasty. The old house creaked and groaned around me. Every plank seemed to have its own story, its own sigh. We had no blinds on the windows, a choice we'd made for the open, airy feeling they gave during the day. Now, they were just big, black mirrors reflecting the dim glow of my lamp, and beyond them, an inky blackness punctuated by blinding flashes of lightning. Each flash lit up the swirling rain, making the trees outside look like bony, dancing skeletons. I tried to distract myself. I picked up my book, a thick mystery novel, but the words swam before my eyes. My mind kept drifting to the storm, to the way the house felt so exposed, so vulnerable. I got up and walked to the kitchen, peering out the window above the sink. Nothing but rain and the blurred shapes of the old oak tree in the front yard. A shiver ran down my spine, but it wasn't just from the chill in the air. Another burst of thunder, closer this time, vibrated through the floorboards. The lights flickered, a brief dip into darkness before they hummed back to life. I held my breath, waiting for the inevitable blackout. It always happened during these big storms. I decided to just try to ride it out. I went back to the living room, curled up on the sofa with a blanket, and tried to focus on the book again. But then I heard it. A faint scraping sound. It was barely audible over the drumming rain and the wind, but it was there. It sounded like something dragging against wood. My heart gave a little lurch. I paused, straining my ears. The wind howled, then died down for a moment, and I heard a scraping sound again. It wasn't the house settling. It wasn't the wind. It was outside. I slowly sat up, my blanket pulling around me. My eyes darted to the windows, those big, unblinking eyes of the house. I tried to tell myself it was just a branch, or maybe a loose piece of siding. But the sound was too rhythmic, too deliberate. My breath hitched in my throat. I held it, listening. The scraping stopped. For a long moment, there was only the roar of the storm. Then, I heard a new sound. A soft, muffled thump. Like something heavy dropping onto the wet earth. My mind raced. Was it an animal? A deer, perhaps, stumbling around in the dark? We had plenty of wildlife out here. But a deer wouldn't make that scraping sound. I swallowed hard. My mouth felt dry. I knew I should probably just ignore it, but a prickle of fear was starting to spread through my chest. I slowly pushed myself off the sofa, my bare feet cold on the wooden floor. I crept to the big front window, peering out into the darkness. The lightning flashed again, illuminating the yard in a stark, black and white snapshot. And that's when I saw it. A figure. It was tall and dark, silhouetted against the swirling rain. It was moving slowly, purposefully near the edge of the woods, just past the old oak tree. It wasn't an animal. It was a person. My blood ran cold. My heart hammered against my ribs, so loud I thought it would burst. Who would be out here, in this storm, in the middle of nowhere? Another flash of lightning. This time, the figure was closer to the house, moving with a strange, deliberate gait. It seemed to be looking at the house, and at me. Even from a distance, I felt its gaze, a cold, unsettling weight. Panic started to bubble up, hot and fast. I stumbled back from the window, nearly tripping over the rug. My mind screamed at me to run, to hide. But where? This house was a fishbowl, with no place to truly disappear. I backed away, my eyes still fixed on the window, as if the figure could materialize inside at any moment. Then, with a sudden, deafening crack, the lights flickered and died. Utter darkness. The house plunged into a black void, the only light the infrequent, violent flashes of lightning that now seemed to stab through the windows, illuminating the room in ghostly, fleeting glimpses. The wind howled louder, a banshee's wail, and the rain hammered against the glass like 1,000 frantic fingers. I gasped, a small, choked sound. The darkness was thick, suffocating. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. My heart was pounding so hard I felt dizzy. My phone. I needed my phone. It was on the kitchen counter. I fumbled in the blackness, my hands outstretched, trying to navigate the familiar layout of the living room. Each step was a terrifying leap of faith. The sound of my own breathing was ragged and loud in my ears. I bumped into the coffee table, a sharp pain shooting through my shin. I bit back a cry. I just needed to get to the kitchen. Just needed to call Mark. Or the police. Suddenly, a new sound cut through the storm. A faint, metal clink. It came from the back of the house, near the kitchen. My blood turned to ice. Someone was trying to get in. My legs, which had been frozen in place, suddenly sprang into action. I stumbled through the living room, my hands blindly reaching, grabbing at furniture to guide me. The adrenaline was surging through me, making my movements jerky and uncoordinated. I crashed into the wall, scraping my arm. No! I whimpered, a desperate, useless plea. I finally reached the kitchen counter, my fingers scrambling for my phone. It felt like an eternity before I found it, cold and smooth beneath my fingertips. I fumbled for the side button, my thumb shaking so badly I could barely press it. The small screen lit up, a beacon in the oppressive darkness. My fingers flew across the keypad, dialing 911. The phone felt slippery in my sweaty palm. It rang once, twice. 911, what's your emergency? A calm, professional voice. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. There's someone outside my house. I blurted, my voice high and thin, barely a whisper. I'm alone. The power's out. I saw them. They're trying to get in. Ma'am, can you tell me your address? I rattled off our rural address, the words tumbling out. It's a long way out. No streetlights. No neighbors close. Okay, ma'am. We're dispatching an officer to your location. It may take some time given the weather and your remote address. Can you tell me what you see now? I don't see anything. It's dark. The power's out. But I heard something. A noise from the back. like someone trying the door or a window. I choked back a sob. Please hurry. Stay calm, ma'am. Try to find a safe place in your home. Do you have a weapon? A baseball bat, anything? No, nothing like that. I was practically crying now. Just hurry. The operator kept talking, her voice a steady anchor in my swirling panic, giving me instructions, trying to keep me calm. She told me to barricade myself in her room, to stay on the line. I wanted to tell her I couldn't move, that my legs felt like jelly. But I knew I had to. I had to do something. I ended the call, knowing the police were on their way, but the thought of how long it would take them to get here was a new wave of terror. This was not a quick drive. Not in this storm. I crept back to the living room, still clutching my phone, its faint glow my only comfort. The rain continued to beat against the windows, but now, every gust of wind, every creak of the house, sounded like a footstep, a whisper, a presence. My eyes strained in the darkness, trying to pierce the blackness outside. Minutes crawled by, each one feeling like an hour. I huddled on the sofa, pulled the blanket around me like a shield, and tried to make myself small, invisible. My ears were on high alert, every nerve ending screaming. I listened for the scraping sound, for the metallic clink, for any sign that the figure was getting closer. The storm seemed to intensify, the lightning flashes more frequent, more violent. Each flash painted the living room in stark, frightening detail. The empty fireplace, the dark corners, the black windows that felt like eyes staring back at me. Then I heard it again. A faint scratching at the back door. Not a metallic sound this time, but a softer, persistent scratching. Like fingernails on wood. Or something trying to pry a gap. My breath hitched. I squeezed my eyes shut, wishing I could disappear. This was real. This was happening. I don't know how long I sat there, shivering, terrified, listening to the storm and the phantom noises. It felt like an eternity. My phone battery was slowly draining, its glow dimming. I knew I couldn't stay there, frozen in fear. I needed to do something, anything, to make myself safer. I considered hiding in the pantry, or even the small linen closet. But I knew the house, and I knew how easily someone could find me. My only hope was the police. Suddenly, a different sound. A distinct crunch of gravel outside. Not the random scatter of wind-blown debris, but the sound of tires on our long, winding driveway. My head snapped up. Had they arrived already? It seemed too fast. Another crunch, closer this time. Then, the distinct, welcome sound of a car door opening and closing. And then, the faint, glorious sound of voices. Hello! Anyone home? A deep, masculine voice, muffled by the storm but unmistakable. Tears of relief streamed down my face. They were here. They were finally here. I scrambled off the sofa, my legs wobbly beneath me. I rushed to the front door, fumbling with the deadbolt. It seemed to stick, refusing to turn. My fingers were numb with cold and fear. Hello, the voice called again, closer now. With a final, desperate twist, the bolt clicked open. I yanked the door open, nearly falling out onto the porch. Two figures stood there, illuminated by the beam of a flashlight. Two police officers, their rain gear gleaming in the intermittent lightning. Ma'am? Are you all right? One of them asked, his voice full of concern. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, sobbing, pointing vaguely in the direction of the back of the house. The officers exchanged a look. "Stay here, ma'am. We'll check the perimeter." They moved quickly, their flashlights cutting through the darkness, their boots crunching on the wet gravel. I watched them disappear around the side of the house, their voices fading into the roar of the storm. I stood there, clinging to the doorframe, my body shaking uncontrollably. The air was cold, the rain still pouring down, but I didn't care. They were here. I was safe. After what felt like another eternity, the officers reappeared, their faces grim. "We found some disturbances around the back door, ma'am," the first officer said, his voice serious. "Looks like someone was definitely trying to get in. There are some fresh marks on the frame, and a few loose floorboards near the foundation that look like they've been tampered with." My stomach churned. So it wasn't my imagination. It was real. "But there's no one here now," the second officer added. "It looks like they left in a hurry once they heard us coming. Probably saw our headlights." I nodded, unable to form words. The fear was still a raw ache in my chest, but it was slowly being replaced by a profound, overwhelming relief. The officers stayed for a while, shining their flashlights around the house, checking every window and door, making sure I was truly alone. They wrote down my statement, their pens scratching on wet paper. They told me they'd patrol the area more frequently, especially during storms. Finally, they left, their red and blue lights flashing briefly against the dark, rainy landscape as their car pulled away. The house was still dark, still filled with the sounds of the storm. But now, the silence felt different. It was no longer empty, but quiet, still. The terror had faded, leaving behind only the cold residue of what had almost happened. I went back inside, locking the door firmly behind me. I didn't turn on my phone light. I just walked through the familiar darkness of my home, knowing that I was safe, knowing that the worst was over. But I also knew that the image of that dark figure, walking slowly in the rain, would stay with me for a long, long time. And I knew that from now on, those big, open windows wouldn't feel quite so welcoming anymore.